Hi there, welcome to Homekeepers. So glad to be with you today, my friend. And it's always good to just be able to connect again. And I'm telling you, Wanda and Stephanie and I, we feel the connection. We appreciate you so very much. Now, if you saw the last program, Heidi, who has a very difficult last name, which I will not attempt, introduced to us a mission field that she has founded. It's called Open Arms Mexico. And there was something about it so beautifully fitting into our Homekeepers theme, and that is that they have decided to build child care centers in Mexico to keep the mothers with their children. So the mothers can go to work and the children are in a daycare center, not an orphanage. Isn't that brilliant? Well, I asked her to stay over and I talked to her because I felt like we really hadn't finished the subject. So we've got the Christmas decorations up now, but we didn't have them up when she was here, but you will enjoy and love the content. And I'm going to join Stephanie for a Christmas cookie, and it's a very easy one to make. I suggest you have the things ready in your cupboard because it's so simple, and you can just stir them up at the last minute for anybody that comes by. So they're called chocolate peanut butter Christmas cookies. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Sure does. And we are still viewer supported, my friends. And we appreciate so much all your gifts, your letters, your cards. And thank you so much. If you would like to donate to this very worthy ministry, that information is on your screen. You can either write to us and write out a check like I do, or you can call the 800 number and use your credit card like Stephanie does. So we give you just all the opportunities in the world. And thank you so very, very much. You got the Christmas spirit?
Always.
Listen, I say this with all sincerity. I've never seen anybody in my very long life jump into Christmas like this girl.
I just love it. It gives me a natural high. I can't help myself.
Yeah, and she starts in June, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so super easy.
We've got stuff to buy.
Right, we have the Betty Crocker pouches. Now, it calls for the chocolate chip. This is the double chocolate chunk. So we'll see how it looks. It's going to be tasty either way.
Yeah.
We have a cup and a half of oats. We have a cup of butter, softened 3 eggs, and then we have some M&Ms that we're going to put in at the very, very end. Okay?
And
this makes a ton of cookies. A ton.
You can see
Which
now
is great.
why I said you can have these ingredients on hand.
Yeah.
I was thinking again, and we have talked about this before. I grew up in a home where everything was made from scratch.
Yes.
And gradually, these helps came in, and I'm sure they're a real blessing to a lot of the
all the
those
working
homekeepers
mamas
out there.
Yes. Even non.
Look
Okay,
at that
this is
huge
a
amount, my friend.
Yes, I made really big cookies, and it made a lot. Susan says I can use the KitchenAid mixer. I'm gonna try it.
Oh,
It's very, very thick. I should have creamed the butter first. Okay, well, I should have creamed the butter first.
You can try it.
We're gonna try it.
well, let's do it.
I
Let's
did it
do
with my hands this morning, so we'll see. Okay, here we go.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
And nothing is better on television than something you haven't tried.
Yes, and also, I was getting ready to spray the pans this morning, and you don't spray these.
Nope, because there's lots of butter in here. There's a whole cup of butter.
Oh, that's working out.
Okay, Susan was right.
Isn't she always?
Most of the time,
She's
yes.
a very smart lady. Very smart lady.
Yes, so we're just gonna get this all mixed up, and then you put the chocolate, the M&Ms in, put tablespoon chunks
And it's
in the...
Christmas.
Yes, and it's $3.75 for about 15 minutes.
And
super simple.
The M&Ms give it the Christmas color.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure all your shopping's done. And
Most of my shopping's done. I'm doing charcuterie boxes for the adults this year. I told you that. And then for Christmas morning, I've been asked to do a charcuterie breakfast
okay,
island.
what does charcuterie mean?
It's just
I've never heard that
it's just
word.
an adult Lunchable, and we wanted to be fancy. Okay, that's what it is.
Boy, you're never too old to learn.
Yeah.
Because I'm old.
Well, my mom hadn't heard what it was either. She had to look it up.
yeah,
I'm gonna
and
make
your
a
mom's
mess.
younger than I am. So.
Yes, so I'm gonna do waffles, and I'm gonna do donuts, and I'm gonna do different pastries, an egg casserole. I'm gonna do different color.
For your church?
No, for my family
Oh, okay.
on Christmas morning. We're having it at my son's.
Well, I think a big breakfast on Christmas is required.
Yeah, so I'll take pictures.
Please do.
I'll put them on my fan page.
And you can see this is a very thick.
Oh, right here, muscles.
Yeah.
Oy vey.
You have to be strong and in good condition to do this.
I can't forget that.
Yep.
I almost forgot the most important part. I won't get in there with my hands like I did this morning. I'll try to be. And then you just drop it on the cookie sheets, ungreased, right?
Yep.
15 minutes, 375.
Boy, that looks like hard work.
And we had a lot of cookies, so the crew tried them already, and they said they're delicious.
It makes a lot of cookies. If you like them big or if you like them small, you can really...
Go big.
But you know, say someone wanted to get some nice bags and give them for Christmas, I'd make them real small. And
I wouldn't. I'd get bigger bags. No.
And you could get a lot of bags out of this recipe.
Oh, so many. So do you want to bring them over so we can see
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So many cookies.
And to me, that's a really big cookie.
That's because Arthelene Rippy eats like a bird. That's a nice holiday size cookie, okay?
Yes.
And it's delicious, right?
It's very good. I think I told you, I went to the doctor, they told me to eat more.
Listen, I have never in my whole entire life, in my 29 plus years,
but old people
been
don't eat
told
much.
to eat less at the doctor's. In fact, every time I go, he's like, Stephanie, let's talk about the scale, shall we? I'm like, no, we shan't. No.
Yeah, I thought that's a really different kind of advice.
Yeah.
For Americans. All right. I think you would want to have this recipe in your arsenal. So the information's coming up on the screen. Get it the way you want. If you didn't hear Heidi on the last show, you are going to really be inspired. So stay with us.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, you may receive it by contacting us through social media as listed on the screen. When requesting a copy through the mail, be sure to include a self-addressed stamped envelope. Thank you, and please know we always appreciate hearing from our viewers.
Well, I am very happy I was able to keep Heidi over to finish the story she started on the last program because the story's too big for one program. And so I'm going to ask her to just kind of recap what we talked about yesterday, that she had a real revelation from the Lord. And I'll tell you, Heidi, I've been in the ministry a long time and heard, how God calls people, but it was like you would bam, and she changed everything. You broke up with a boyfriend, you got rid of your car, and you said, I'm going to Mexico.
Yeah, I went on a mission trip. God spoke to me very loud and clear. I knew that I had to turn my back on all of the things that I was living for, which was myself in the world.
And you weren't really serving the Lord that much. You just went with you tagged along with your mother.
Yeah, I had grown up in a Christian home, but my mom invited me to go on a missions trip with her to this orphanage, and I said, I want to practice my Spanish. And so I went down thinking about me and how I could better my Spanish, and there I get my calling really for life. And that was 18 years ago, and I've lived in Mexico ever since then.
You seem very happy. And also, just to fast forward, she married a young man who kind of grew up in an orphanage, which you could say that would be one marriage that is absolutely doomed, but it was working very well. And God gave you the better idea than an orphanage, and thank God for those that rescue the children. My, what would we do without them? But a daycare center is better because that mother picks up the child in the evening and they're still a family. And so you built one. How many do you have now?
We have 2 child care centers that we have built and are running, and we're starting our 3rd child care center. We broke ground this year on that.
And also, you're helping some in the education. That's one thing. I've had people sit in that chair, and say, I always say, get them saved and educate them, okay? And but in Mexico, in the higher grades, they have to pay, right?
Right. So in Mexico, 7th grade is about the average education. 18 years ago, when I came on the mission field, 6th grade was the average education. So in 18 years, it's only gone up by 1 grade. Many times the people have so many children that they can't afford to send them to school. Because once they go into junior high and high school, you actually have to pay some of the tuition. It's very, very low cost, but for people making $12 a day, which most of our families make, that they don't have that money, and so they have to start working in the work field to help support the family. But a child in our care, so we provide no-cost child care for the most vulnerable children in the communities that we reach. We really want to prevent children from going to orphanages or being locked in their homes on the streets while their parents are at work. And so we provide no-cost child care for those families. If a child grows up in our program, we have babies to 6th grade in our daycare program. But they can continue on into our junior high and high school program, and we will continue to pay for their education. The sponsors that sponsor a child maybe at 2 or 3 years old, they have the option to continue sponsoring their education as they continue to grow older. And so now we've been doing this for 15 years. Our doors have been open for 15 years. And this year we have 5 of our students that have grown up in our child care program that are actually in college. And it's so amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's so amazing to see the sponsors that have followed them all of these years. They now get to invest in their life for these kids to go to college and actually have a career and a profession.
Do you have kind of an overview, because you take these children of quite an age span, and you feed them a lot of Jesus when they're in there. Do you have any kind of a picture of how that affects the family when they go home?
Definitely. Every day we do a Bible devotion or a Bible class with our children. And so we had this one little girl. We would do the devotions at home, and then she would actually go home and start praying for her food at home. Oh. And this family was maybe a Catholic family, but not
in name only.
Yeah, in name only. And the mom was like, I should be teaching my children this, and they are actually teaching me.
Praise
and
God.
So she came in and she asked to talk to me, and she said, I want to know what my girls have. I want what they have, because they have joy and they have peace, and they're thankful for even the daily bread that they were given. And so I was able to lead her to Christ. She's actually now on staff with me. She's been on staff with me for almost 10 years now. This same little girl would take the Bible devotions and go home and teach it to her cousins and her neighbors, and opened up a little Bible study in her house as a little 8-year-old girl, teaching the Word of God to her little friends and her neighbors.
Yeah, I hope people can understand how big this is. Because as I've said earlier, thank God for orphanages. At least keeps them off the street. And of course the Christian orphanages are so superior. But the idea that you don't separate them at all from their family. I wonder how many people have put a child in an orphanage and they really meant to, stay in touch and all. But life changes things for so many different reasons. And the fact that you can keep a child with their parents, or maybe at least with one parent, is just, it's just brilliant. It had to come from the Lord.
It's definitely from the Lord. There are so many parents that have good intentions to get their children back, but shame and guilt and the enemy just comes against you. And he's really against families. He's tried to break up the family since the Garden of Eden. And so he's always have come after the family. And what we do is we really fight to keep families together. We want to help the single mom. We want to help the single dad, the mom and the dad that can't afford to take care of their children or pay for someone to take care of their children while they go to work. We want to say, don't worry about it. We will take care of them. We will teach them about Jesus. We will give them warm food to eat, send them to school with a uniform and a backpack and school supplies, give them everything that they need so that they can be successful in life while you go to work and not worry about what's going on with your children.
This is one of the most innovative missionary projects I've ever heard of, and we'll keep that website up. And I know that you viewers, you homekeepers out there, you have a real heart for children, and I know this strikes a chord in your heart. There's just no doubt in my mind. And so I would just encourage you to send an offering to Open Arms, and maybe you could support a child or whatever. But I call this kind of an entrepreneurial style of missions. You've, as they say, kicked it up another notch when you managed to keep children with their parents. Now you also are establishing a coffee shop, which I can see that if it works real well, it could be other places, that support, all the profit goes to Open Arms.
Yes, so at our second campus, we have one campus in La Misión, which is about 1 hour south of the San Diego border. Our second campus, where we're actually pastoring, is in Camalú. And in Camalú, that's 4 hours south of the border, we're actually building a coffee shop on our site. The coffee shop's total mission is to make Jesus' last command to go into all the world and preach the gospel our first priority. And so all of the profits will go towards starting new Open Arms campuses. We'll support the mission trips that we take as a church into Southern California, Southern Mexico, or even to Cuba. We support some missionaries and some pastors in Cuba. And so all of the profit from this coffee shop will actually go back into missions.
I was just thinking a while ago when you said that on the last program, she described the encounter she had. It was with God at the time, but she didn't know it. But He really put it in her heart to learn Spanish. You would be out of, just out of where do I go from here if you couldn't communicate with them. Now, did you establish a church also?
Mm-hmm. So we are pastors of the Open Arms Church at our Camalú campus. And so when we first came to Camalú, we talked to a lot of people, missionaries and ministries close by, and we felt something for Camalú. And everyone's like, don't go to Camalú. In Camalú, there's hard ground. No missionaries, no ministry has ever survived. The churches are very small, 15 to 20 people. Don't go to Camalú. Well, when we got out of that meeting, me and my husband Daniel, we look at each other and we're like, well, Camalú needs Jesus. And so let's go to Camalú. And we started in Camalú. And I mean, if you put...
Do you have a child care there?
We have a child care center there too. Just imagine putting my husband, who grew up in an orphanage, an orphan, a poor missionary girl together. We equal zero. I did not come from a family with money. We had nothing but $1 in our pocket to start our ministry. And when we gave that dollar back to God, we said, God, this is our last dollar.
That's all we've got.
We know that this dream and vision you have put on our heart, but you've got to do it because this is all that we have. And when we woke up that next morning, we were full of faith and we said, God, we know you're going to give us a sign. We know this is what you want us to do. He provided someone to give us a check for $250. Now, when you've had $1, $250 seemed astronomical. We started buying 2x4s and to build our first child care center. That was 15 years ago. When we started our second child care center here in Camalú, where people told us, do not go there, it's hard ground. Again, we're at that spot. We don't have any extra money to build another child care, to build a church.
Let alone a church.
We're already supporting 75 children. And
yeah, because your child care centers are free.
They're free, yes. And so we said, God, this is all we have. Take what we have. We're willing to say yes. We're all in for what you have, for your plans for us. Here we are, use us. And again, He has provided astronomically to build our second campus in Camalú. And our church is the fastest growing church in all of the valley there. It's the biggest church in Camalú. When people said, don't go there, it's hard ground, we have seen God show up in miraculous ways. The families of our child care center are able to come to church. They're able to bring their children and come as a family, as well as the many people that come from the community get to hear the word of God. And so it's a very holistic, family-oriented ministry where not only are we reaching the community and solving a social problem, which is a child care problem, but we're also solving a spiritual problem that without Jesus, there's no hope in this world.
Absolutely not. And I keep going back to the fact that child care is so superior to orphanages. And praise God for all the Christian orphanages that Americans have gone over there and started all over the world and won kids to Christ. But when you can really reach the whole family through that child, that's very superior.
Yeah. Can I tell you a really amazing story about our third campus?
Sure.
So one day we were at our Camalú campus and this couple shows up And they said, we've heard about what you're doing for the children of Mexico, and we've tried to get a church going, and we've tried to get a children's ministry going, but we can't do it on our own. Will you help us? And we said, yeah, we'll mentor you, we'll help you. And they said, no, we need you to do it for us. We need you to do it. And they said that in 2004, they lived in Tijuana, and they locked their girls in their home, and they had to go to work, and their house burned down, and they lost their children in a house fire. And that was one of the stories that we had heard when we were both working at the orphanage way back then, is why we wanted to start Open Arms, is to keep families together, to make sure that people didn't have to lock their children in their homes while they went to work or drop them off at an orphanage. Here's the couple of one of the reasons why we started Open Arms, sitting at our campus, willing to give us their property to start an Open Arms on their campus.
But that's the way the Lord works.
I know.
He takes all these sorrowful things and turns them for good. You're still very young. What is that long-range view that you and your husband have?
We really believe that in our lifetime, God is going to give us the means and the open doors to have 20 campuses in our lifetime. And so right now we have 3. We don't know where our next campus is going to be. We're not even ready for that. We're barely building our 3rd one. But we know that this is a vision from the Lord. We know that it's the heartbeat of God, is to keep families together. And so we know that He will open the doors. Maybe it will not just be in Mexico, possibly a campus in Cuba. We do have a ministry actually who took our vision and started it in Venezuela, and there's actually an Open Arms in Venezuela. They do it on their own, but they actually call it Open Arms. And so we know that we have been able to mentor many other people to start a child care center instead of an orphanage, so that we can reach the whole entire family for the Lord, and we can prevent such a horrible life of growing up feeling unwanted, unloved, and abandoned in an orphanage.
Yeah, they can stay with their mother.
They can stay with their mom.
That's so important. Compare Cuba and Mexico. Are they very similar in not only culture, but as far as prosperity? And do they need a lot of orphanages like Mexico?
It's actually very, very different. I went to Cuba in 2019 on a missions trip and just fell in love with the people and the culture and some missionaries and pastors. And in Cuba, the government does take care of the people. They're very dependent on the government.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of drug addiction. There's not a need for orphanages, and not necessarily a need for daycares, but definitely a need for church planting and for support of pastors. They're so closed off in the world that they barely have Facebook and YouTube within the last couple of years. So they're barely getting all of these resources that we have available to us in their hands. And so they just really need a lot of mentoring. They need a lot of resources, financial help, to be able to build their church. And so we want to be able to be those hands and feet for those pastors and missionaries in Cuba that don't have what the rest of the world actually gets to have.
It's just the most incredible story that this girl grows up in a Christian home. She kind of veers away from the Lord. He gets her attention on a mission trip, and then you marry a Mexican from an orphanage. Anybody would say, there's no way that would work. That you came from something normal, and I'm sure most children in an orphanage feel somewhat abandoned. And was it tough the first year?
Not necessarily the first year, but definitely the first years. It was very different. Our cultures are very different. Our backgrounds are very different. I'm very grateful that the directors of the orphanage actually took him and his brothers in. And so
you wouldn't have met him.
He kind of grew up in an American culture because the directors were Americans. And so he did grow up with a lot of the American cultures, so that really helped. But God knew what He was doing. He orchestrated our lives to come together. He knew the bigger purpose, that it's very helpful having a Mexican citizen being able to do all of the Mexican paperwork, run the Mexican side of the business, and then have the American side where I get to run all of the nonprofit, the 501c3, be able to come and speak to the churches in the United States, Australia, Canada, and be able to have both of those sides working together. He's really put the best of the best together.
Amen. Well, one of the great joys of doing this program for so many years is that I can bring people like you on, and my viewers can get just at least a bird's eye view of what the Lord's doing around the world. And I think anything with children just strikes a chord with that homekeeper out there. And so thankful that I could welcome you to the program. We're almost out of time, but I know they want to know where you got that pretty necklace.
This is actually a handmade necklace from Mexico. Someone gave me this for my birthday, but handmade artisans down there made it, and I just love it.
They're very colorful people.
Very colorful, yes.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks for being here. And you stay with me. I have a couple of things to say before we have to say goodbye.
Arthelene would like you to keep the following information handy. You may contact Homekeepers by writing to Homekeepers, P.O. Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758, or go to www.rippy.org. Remember, we always enjoy hearing from our viewers, and we thank you for your support.
If you didn't get that website, it's openarmsmexico.org, and I would encourage you to give to this wonderful, wonderful mission, this wonderful ministry. And that is so much privilege that I've had to bring missionaries on through the years to people who may never get that viewpoint, but God is working all over the world. And it's very, very exciting. And so I'm so happy that you got to meet Heidi. And I hope that you'll be sure and join us next time, my friend, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you should miss a Homekeepers program, you can catch up by going to www.ctnonline.com. Click on CTN Programs and then on Homekeepers.
Come to the cross, find salvation. Come to the cross and find peace. Come to the cross and find forgiveness. Come is the invitation of the whole Bible. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. And saying by coming, I do repent of sin. I do want to change. I do want His forgiveness. I do want a new life. Come to the cross.